Breaking Bad is a critically acclaimed television series that aired from 2008 to 2013, following the transformation of Walter White, a high school chemistry teacher, into the ruthless drug lord known as Heisenberg. Set against the backdrop of Albuquerque, New Mexico, the show explores themes of morality, identity, and the consequences of choices. Walter White begins as an ordinary man, a dedicated husband and father who feels unfulfilled in his career. He's a brilliant chemist who, despite his talents, has spent years working in a job that doesn't reflect his capabilities. When he's diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, Walter's world is turned upside down. Faced with the reality of his impending death and the desire to secure his family's financial future, he makes a fateful decision to use his chemistry skills to cook methamphetamine. In the beginning, Walter justifies his actions by claiming it's all for his family. He believes that by entering the drug trade, he can provide for them in a way he never could through his teaching job. This self-deception sets the stage for his transformation, as he becomes increasingly consumed by his alter ego, Heisenberg. Walter's descent into the criminal underworld reveals the complexities of his character. He starts as a sympathetic figure, a man desperate to do right by his family, but as he dives deeper into his new life, we see the emergence of darker impulses. Walter struggles with his identity throughout the series, deluding himself into believing that he is still the same man when, in reality, he is becoming a killer. When Walter kills his first victim, Crazy 8, he's visibly shaken. He doesn't want to admit it, but that moment marks the first crack in his self-image. He tries to tell himself and Jesse that he had no choice, that it was about survival. But deep down, we see the conflict. Walter doesn't yet realize that he's crossed a line he can't uncross. He's not just a family man anymore, he's becoming a killer, and his ego can't handle that truth. Walter justifies many of his killings with a sense of necessity. In his mind, he convinces himself that each murder, whether it's Crazy 8, Gale, or even Mike, was something he had to do. In one key scene, he tries to downplay the severity of his actions, telling Jesse, "It's not murder." It's not. It's self-defense. This line shows just how deeply Walter is entrenched in his delusions, continually crafting excuses for the violence he's willing to commit. He refuses to face the reality that he has become the very thing he once despised. Throughout the series, Walter convinces himself that all of these violent acts are justified by the situation. Whether it's poisoning Brock or ordering the murder of the inmates, Walter's ego allows him to manipulate his own perception of reality. Each death becomes a step towards his ultimate goal, and with each step, the man who once claimed to be doing this all for his family fades further away. When Walter kills Mike, it's no longer about survival. It's a moment of impulsive ego. He's angry, frustrated, and instead of walking away, he pulls the trigger. And then, in the next breath, he realizes the killing was unnecessary. This moment highlights how Walter is no longer the man he believes himself to be. He's delusional, driven by his ego rather than by any need to protect his family. He's no longer just a man who kills to survive, he's a man who kills because his pride won't let him do anything else. Walter's delusions about who he is reach their peak in the famous "I am the one who knocks" scene. Here, we see a man who has fully bought into the idea that he's in control, that he's the one with the power. But even in this moment, he refuses to admit the truth to himself. He's no longer a family man doing what he must. He's Heisenberg, a drug lord, a killer. This moment is not just a declaration of power, it's an expression of Walter's delusion. He still sees himself as someone who is doing this for his family, but the audience can see it more clearly. His ego is so inflated that he can't see that he's no longer just Walter White, chemistry teacher and father. He's something much darker, and his refusal to acknowledge this is what leads to his ultimate downfall. Now, let's contrast this with Gus Fring. While Walter White deludes himself about who he is, Gus is a man who knows exactly what he is. Gus Fring is a killer, but unlike Walter, he has no illusions about it. He hides it behind the mask of a mild-mannered businessman, but beneath that, Gus is always fully aware of the monster lurking within. Gus's character embodies a level of control and calculation that starkly contrasts with Walter's emotional turmoil and impulsiveness. The scene where Gus slashes Victor's throat is one of the clearest demonstrations of Gus's acceptance of who he is. There's no hesitation, no internal conflict. Gus knows that this is the price of power, and he's willing to pay it. Unlike Walter, Gus isn't doing this out of impulse or emotion. He's methodical, precise, and his actions are always in service of the empire he's building. Gus embraces his role as a killer. while Walter continues to lie to himself. Despite their differences, both characters share similarities that make their relationship intriguing. Both Walter and Gus are deeply intelligent and strategic, capable of navigating the dangerous world they inhabit. They are both driven by ambition and a desire for control, but they approach this desire in fundamentally different ways. Walter's ambition is often clouded by his ego, leading to reckless decisions, while Gus's ambition is grounded in a cold, calculated understanding of his own nature and the world around him. To understand what made Gus Fring turn into a monster, we must look at his past. Gus's motivations are rooted in a profound loss. His friend and business partner, Max, was brutally murdered by Hector Salamanca on orders from the Mexican drug cartel. This event not only hardened Gus but also fueled his quest for revenge. Gus's transformation into a monster can be traced back to this pivotal moment. It instilled in him a fierce determination to build an empire and eliminate any threat to his power. His past shapes his present, and the monster he becomes is a direct response to the violence he experienced. Gus's path to power is characterized by his strategic mind and ruthless efficiency. Unlike Walter, who operates on impulse and emotion, Gus meticulously plans every move, ensuring that he remains steps ahead of his enemies. He uses his legitimate business, Los Pollos Hermanos, as a cover for his drug operations, demonstrating a duality that is both charming and chilling. This careful balance allows him to maintain control over his empire while concealing the monster he truly is. The tragedy lies in how his desire for vengeance morphs him into the very thing he sought to overcome: a brutal, calculating killer. Gus and Walter both wear masks, but the key difference is that Gus knows he's wearing one. His persona as the owner of Los Pollos Hermanos is just that, a persona. He knows he's not just a businessman. He's a man willing to kill anyone who threatens his empire. Walter, on the other hand, convinces himself that his Heisenberg persona is just a means to an end, that he's still fundamentally a family man. Gus's mask allows him to keep control. He never lets his ego dictate his actions in the same way Walter does. Even in the moment of his death, Gus walks out of Hector Salamanca's room, adjusting his tie, calm and composed. Meanwhile, Walter's decisions grow more reckless and destructive as his ego swells, leading to one chaotic situation after another. One of the best moments that highlights the stark difference between Walter White and Gus Fring is the scene where Hank is in the hospital. The room is filled with police officers. People Walter fears will uncover his secret. His anxiety is palpable, and despite his efforts to stay calm, the weight of his secret life is too much for him to bear. Every glance from a police officer feels like a threat. Walter's ego, though inflated when he's in control, is incredibly fragile under pressure. Here, in this moment surrounded by law enforcement, his fear is on full display. His ego, which drives him to believe he's untouchable as Heisenberg, crumbles when he's reminded of the danger he's in. This moment reveals just how thin the line is between Walter's delusion of power and his underlying paranoia. Then, there's Gus Fring. Gus walks into the same room, filled with the same police officers, but he's completely calm. He works the room with charm and ease, shaking hands with law enforcement and medical personnel alike. Not once does Gus show any sign of fear or nervousness because, unlike Walter, Gus's ego is under control. He knows who he is and what he's capable of, and that self-awareness gives him the power to navigate these situations effortlessly. Where Walter's ego buckles under the pressure, Gus thrives in these moments. His calm demeanor is part of his disguise, a mask he's perfected over years of building his empire. Gus doesn't need to prove anything to anyone because he knows exactly who he is: a killer operating in plain sight, without fear or guilt. Walter, on the other hand, is plagued by his own delusions, believing that he can balance both worlds, Heisenberg and the family man. But this scene shows how unstable that balance really is. This scene perfectly captures the core difference between Walter and Gus. Walter's ego is rooted in a lie. He wants to believe he's doing everything for his family, that he's still a good man despite the blood on his hands. But moments like these expose his true fear, the reality that he's lost control. Gus, on the other hand, is in control because he's accepted who he is. He's not pretending to be someone else, he's a predator masking as prey, moving seamlessly between two worlds without letting his ego get in the way. While Walter struggles to hold it together, Gus's ego remains unshaken. This contrast, Walter's internal panic versus Gus's calculated control, highlights the fundamental difference in their characters. Walter's delusion makes him vulnerable, while Gus's self-awareness makes him dangerous. The only person who truly sees Walter's ego and the extent of his delusions is Jesse Pinkman. Throughout the series, Jesse is often the moral compass, even if he himself is deeply flawed. He recognizes that Walter is not the hero he pretends to be. In their interactions, especially in moments of confrontation, Jesse expresses disbelief at Walter's justifications and the lengths he goes to in order to maintain his facade. Jesse's perspective serves as a crucial counterpoint to Walter's self-deception. He sees through the layers of lies and attempts to make Walter confront the monster he is becoming. In one of the most poignant moments in the series, Jesse confronts Walter about the consequences of their actions. He challenges Walter's claims that everything is for family, calling him out on his ego and the pain he's caused. This moment highlights the tragic irony of Walter's journey. While he believes he is acting nobly, it is Jesse who sees him for what he truly is, a man consumed by his own pride and ambition. Jesse's awareness of Walter's moral decline adds depth to their relationship, showcasing how their dynamic shifts from partnership to manipulation. Ultimately, Jesse serves as a reflection of Walter's lost humanity. As Walter sinks deeper into his alter ego, he loses sight of the person he once was, while Jesse remains tethered to the consequences of their actions. This dynamic creates a tragic sense of loss, emphasizing that Walter's descent into villainy is not only a personal tragedy but also a corruption of the bond he once shared with Jesse. Jesse's ability to see through Walter's ego ultimately underscores the tragic nature of Walter's transformation, as he becomes a man haunted by the monster he has created. In the end, the difference between Walter White and Gus Fring isn't just about their actions, it's about their awareness of who they are. Walter, for all his intelligence and cunning, is trapped by his own delusions, constantly lying to himself about what kind of man he really is. Gus, however, is fully aware of his nature and embraces it. This acceptance gives him an advantage that Walter never has the ability to maintain control, even in the most dangerous situations. So, were Walter and Gus really so different after all? Can life, when pushed to the edge, turn anyone from a Walter White into the monster Heisenberg became, or perhaps into a Gus Fring? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.